Tonight's presentation, although edited for YouTube, contains imagery and subject matter some may find disturbing. While our program is educational, we still feel that viewer discretion is advised.
So I'm not gonna lie, that last video was pretty depressing, and I really needed to do something just perhaps a little less real. And also, those anti-vaxxers and Alex Jones fans really showed me the error of my ways in the comment section. So with that said, why don't we talk about today's video? Animated programs serve as an escape for many adults and kids alike, whether that be through anime or more traditional American-style animation.
Because of this, cartoons often focus on passive, easy-to-digest entertainment, often straying away from politics, controversial themes, and grim, dark situations.
Today will be just a bit different, however, as we talk about the times when animation drops this facade of being just children's entertainment and steps into the realm of being gripping animation that sometimes just gets uncomfortably a bit too real.
And I'm here because, well, look at my channel, I pretty much do this for a living.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just kinda wanted to put my own spin on it and do a much better job than those soulless corporate machines at WatchMojo.
No worries.
With that said, sit back, relax, and prepare to be scared.
As we list 9 times cartoons got way too real.
Static Shock, Sons of the Fathers. Cartoons often feel like a place to escape the shitty reality of our world. Politics, racism, sexism, it always felt like cartoons were worlds where things like that didn't matter or exist. So whenever an issue like this pops up in a show, it's always a sudden shock back into reality. The Static Shock episode, Sons of the Fathers, does just that. Virgil wonders why Richie never invites him over to his house. They are best friends and partners after all. It just doesn't make sense. Richie eventually invites him over on a night that his father is out, but things go south when he comes home early. It gets very obvious very fast that Richie's dad, Sean, is racist. He makes derogatory comments under his breath, and eventually Virgil overhears him saying that he shouldn't have to deal with those people in his own home.
That kid's a bad influence. All his kind are.
Keep your voice down.
It's bad enough I gotta deal with them all day long. Now one of them's in my house.
Richie lashes out at his father and runs away, leading him to end up getting kidnapped by the villain Ebon. Sean, Virgil, and Virgil's dad reluctantly team up to save Richie, and in doing so, leads Sean to realize the error of his racist ways and change. It's nice that he ended up changing in the end, but life isn't always tied up that nice and neatly with a bow. It's rare that someone of an older age would change their views on people of different ethnicities that late in life. It's sad and unfortunate, but it's just the realistic truth sometimes. All you can do is use every opportunity to teach others how wrong it is, like the creators of Static Shock did in this episode. Many went in expecting a superhero cartoon and got something more. Sometimes, it's a good thing when a cartoon shocks you back into reality.
Why Charlie Brown Why? From Peanuts. Charles Schultz's Charlie Brown has always had a real feel to it, even if it had a dog that walked on 2 feet and adults who spoke nothing but gibberish. We all remember the classics too. A Charlie Brown Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, all of them. It always ended with a nice, warm message about family, togetherness, and faith. But how about cancer? That's right, the lovable cast of Charlie Brown come together to tell you about how much it sucks to have cancer, and to be around people with cancer. The episode begins with a new girl, Janice, getting sick at school and going to the hospital. Linus and Charlie Brown opt to go visit her, where she begins to explain that she has leukemia, which is why she has been bruising. She then proceeds to casually talk about the procedures involved with treating cancer. Janice is getting chemotherapy and her hair is falling out, which hits Linus and Charlie Brown pretty hard. The music is very laid back and mellow, and the way the children talk is very blunt. The episode proceeds by showing how the other kids generally react to the news. Lucy thinks that's contagious.
You touched her? And now you're handing me a glass of milk? You could catch leukemia from her and give it to me.
The kids bully her for being bald, which puts Linus into a blind rage, as seen here.
Janice has got leukemia, cementhead! That's cancer! Have you ever heard of cancer? She's been in the hospital and she's had chemotherapy to help her get better! And it makes her hair fall out! Does that make you happy?
After this, it's learned that Janice has to go back to the hospital, giving Linus the opportunity to see it from her sister's perspective. They feel neglected because, well, everybody keeps giving Janice attention, presence, and goodwill, while they have to abide by new rules due to her weakened immune system. They express anger towards her, but after a calm talk, they understand the gravity of the situation.
You don't really mean that, do you? I guess not. It's just that we feel a little left out lately since Janice got sick.
The episode ends with Janice going into remission, which allows her to go play on the swings again. This episode was written by Charles Schulz and was made with the purpose of educating families and children about cancer and the types of ordeals that people go through. A lot of what happens in this episode is based on actual research on what happens with families when something this awful happens. This is why the sisters feel left out, why Lucy is terrified of catching it, and why the bully, well, bullies.
Bojack Horseman, The Stop Show. If we wanted, this could be a list comprised of nothing but Bojack Horseman moments. The show has created an entire foundation based on getting very real very fast. The show has many goofy, over-the-top moments and characters that are shattered as soon as reality begins to set in. Some examples of this being Princess Carolyn learning that she's infertile, Sarah Lynn overdosing, and Bojack attacking his mother at his mother's funeral. The latter of which is an episode entitled, innocently enough, Free Churro, where Bojack Horseman spends a good 90% of the episode standing on a podium mocking his dead mother. It's a great character study that is very morbid with scenes and jokes like this.
Fine, but it's fine. And I would like to order a double Jack meal, and I've kind of got somewhere to be, so maybe less with the crying and more with the frying, huh? And the girl apologizes, again, and she offers me a free churro with my meal. And as I'm leaving, I think, I just got a free churro because my mom died. No one ever tells you when your mom dies, you get a free churro.
Yes, morbid, but with every fucked up joke, you learn a little bit more about his relationship with his mother. He talks about stories that honestly never happened just because he wants something nice to say about this woman. He explains some of the abuse that he went through, some of which we've actually seen in past episodes.
And it suddenly dawned on me, hot cock on a rock, she never even picked up the little noise and snot factory. So, here I am, being your mother, which I know is giving you all sorts of mixed up ideas about gender while your brain is still loose and stupid. Just remember, if you become a queer later in life, this isn't my fault. Don't just sing those songs in your nightclub act called My Daddy Was My Mommy while gazing longingly at a tangled string of pearls. Pearls are for ladies, Bojack.
Then he lingers on her last words, which was, I see you. Bojack proceeds to process the meaning of this and what it actually means for his relationship. He was expecting some sort of last jab, but instead got some sort of confirmation that his mother actually acknowledges him, even if it's in an insignificant way. He thinks that maybe in her lucid state of mind, she saw her dead husband, or perhaps she was trying to say something like, I see you, in a very rude context, but could not muster up the strength to properly convey that. It turns out she was not saying, I see you, but I see you, as in the letters. Since they were in a intensive care unit, and the ICU word was written right behind him, Bojack laments that his mom died, and all he got out of it was a free churro.
My mother is dead, and everything is worse now. Because now I know I will never have a mother who looks at me from across the room and says, Bojack Horseman, I see you.
Now that's a little fucked up, and that's just one episode. But the episode we're going to talk about is one that kind of plays with the inner mind in an interesting way. in a way that only could be described as getting a little bit too real for a cartoon. In the Season 5 episode, The Stop Show, Bojack Horseman comes to his senses over the previous day, where his painkiller addiction caused him to strangle his girlfriend and fellow cast member Gina. With the video making its way around the internet, the show is thrusted into a PR nightmare and is ultimately cancelled by the end. The core of this episode actually focuses on Bojack Horseman and his friendship with Diane, which has been rocky at best this entire season. After learning what he did to Gina, and Gina explaining to him why exactly she wants absolutely nothing to do with him ever again, but has to deal with him just because if she doesn't, she loses her one shot at being an actress, he begs Diane to write a scrutinizing article on him so he can own up to his terrible behavior in the eyes of his peers. But she refuses. She tells him that she can't be the one to hold him accountable, and that no matter how much other people shit on his day and how miserable he is, the only person who can truly change his behavior and hold him to true accountability is him. And in the end, that's on him. He ultimately decides to go to rehab and finally face the music and hold himself to some sort of accountability. Diane agrees to drive him there and help him out. Bojack asks her why Diane would help him, and she replies that she hates him. But in the end, she's still her best friend, and he needs her to get better. While it appears that Bojack is changing for the better thanks to the help of this fantastic character Diane, we all know deep down inside Bojack is kind of a shitty person. He knows that, and Diane knows that too, and fully is willing to tell that to his face. But that's not what this is about. It's about doing your best to become just a little less shitty than you were the other day. One of the most important lessons that this show teaches us is that everyone has flaws and everyone can be shitty. Even the shittiest person you know has some sort of upside to them. And as friends, it's kind of our job to try to bolster each other up and improve each other for the better moving forward. I know what it's like to have terrible friends, and I know what it's like to have my head up my own ass a few times. Bojack is a show that is nothing but what the hell moments and strange, hard-hitting messages that come out of nowhere from a distinctly cartoony situation. So if you want to feel like shit, give this one a shot. Roll the next item.
Brian and Stewie from Family Guy. Family Guy gets a lot of flack for its use of cutaway gags and low-effort humor, and for good reason. It has become incredibly repetitive and over-reliant on these aspects for far too long. That's why, when it was announced that there would be a single location episode featuring only Brian and Stewie, with 0 cutaway gags, fans were intrigued. The 150th episode of the series, simply titled Brian and Stewie, is perhaps the most unique episode of the entire show. There's no intro, no background music.
Good evening, America.
Here's a little episode entitled Stewie and Brian.
Well, actually, it's called Brian and Stewie.
Really? Shouldn't it be person before animal like Turner and Hooch?
I don't think that movie is a good example of anything.
I mean, hell, the feeling you get while watching this is almost like the feeling you get when having a very serious conversation with a longtime friend in a quiet room. If that does not sound like Family Guy, then you would be wrong, at least for this episode. The episode starts. We follow Brian and Stewie as they visit his safety deposit box at the Quahog Bank. Unfortunately, the door closes for the end of the workday, leaving them trapped for the whole weekend until Monday. Of course, this is still Family Guy, and much like that serious conversation with your friend, there are, of course, some gross out and politically incorrect humor before it gets into the heart of the episode. Afterwards, they drink some scotch that Brian had kept away in his safety deposit box, causing them to become drunk and verbally attack each other. And after some arguing, Stewie dares Brian to shoot him with a revolver he kept in the box.
Here you go, Brian. You want to kill me? Kill me with this.
It goes out prematurely, causing the two to hide under the table. And it's at this point, Stewie realizes that Brian hates guns, which raises a question: why would he own one? And why would he keep it in a safety deposit box in a bank? Brian then admits that the gun is meant to be an option for him to commit suicide.
I keep it in case I ever want to commit suicide, okay?
Wow. Oh. Oh my god, you're serious?
The scotch was meant to be his last drink. The two share a heartfelt moment and admit that they love each other.
I like you a lot. I guess you could say I really like you. I mean, not in like a, hey, let's have an underpants party or whatever grown-ups do when they're in love. But I mean, I love you as one loves another person whom one simply cannot do without.
Well, I love you too, Stewie.
The next morning, the door opens, and Brian carries a sleeping Stewie out in silence. Despite some of the less than ad-friendly content, this episode is incredibly somber and powerful, leaving behind almost everything that makes it Family Guy. It gets to the depths of these characters who are usually only seen as pawns for the use of comedy. It's a reminder that there are depths to everyone, and some might be going through something much darker than you may have assumed. Sometimes the strongest people in your life, the ones that are seemingly happy, are the people you need to check up on the most. This episode is a depressing reminder of that, so with that, roll the next item.
Game of Tones. Futurama. Sometimes we don't get the chance to say what needs to be said. Time runs out, and we miss our moment of opportunity. Futurama's Game of Tones encompasses that feeling. Despite being part of the later episodes, this one packs as much heart and emotion as some of the earlier episodes, like Jurassic Bark.
Summers, I will wait for you.
Earth is being approached by a mysterious alien ship that continuously belts out an ominous tone that causes structural damage to the planet. With its arrival only 2 weeks away, the world becomes desperate for any way to stop it. It falls to Fry to fix it, as he remembers hearing the tone once before on the very night he was cryogenically frozen. The professor puts Fry into a deep sleep so he can relive that day in his dreams, in order to find the source of the tone. However, he becomes increasingly distracted by spending time with his family, especially his mother. Knowing that he'll never see her again, he becomes desperate to tell her all the things he's been meaning to say, even though it's just a dream version of her.
I need more time with my mom. But it's not even her. She's just part of your dream. That's as close as I'm gonna get.
Eventually, the others enter the dream to hurry Fry along, as they're running out of time. It's revealed that the tone belongs to a Niblonian ship, and they were just searching for the car they accidentally left behind on that night. After Fry helps them find their car, they offer him a reward.
Fry, you've once more done my people a great service. On my honor, I shall find a way to repay you.
Thanks, but no one can give me what I really want.
Later that night, he dreams of his mother again. Only this time, he's been transported into her dream.
Millennium! It happened after I got frozen. How can I be dreaming it in such detail?
Because this isn't your dream, it's your mother's dream.
Whoa, what?
I told you we would reward you. Make it count, my friend.
He's finally able to tell her all the things he's wanted to. They embrace as the episode ends. It can be hard to leave things unsaid. Maybe you went your separate ways. Maybe they passed away. Either way, it hurts. Sometimes, the only way to get what you want to say out is in your dreams. But you never know if they're dreaming of you too.
DARIA. Boxing DARIA. Alright, let's be real here. After I made my last video, I learned that I'm not really the only person who has to either deal with autism or someone who has it. It turns out a lot of you guys either know someone or has autism, considering the fact that I'm still getting tweets about how I totally did a badass thing by calling out Autism Speaks and HFA, Hope for Autism. So when I talk about an episode like this, I want you guys to understand that I come here as someone who has autism, not someone trying to condemn it, because anyone who's seen Daria knows that she has some antisocial issues, which becomes the central conflict of many episodes. That said, I actually like that about the character. I think that's a very endearing trait and humanizes her a lot more than other shows of the time. With that said, why don't I go into Boxing Daria with the best intentions in mind. Daria was a show from the MTV's golden age of animation, and is known for their fair share of episodes that attempt to cover realistic situations, while adding a cartoony, overly satirized twist to them. Boxing Daria is a bit different in this respect because it just takes a realistic situation and just animates it, with very few jokes making their way into the script. Now, I don't need to say this, but considering that 50% of marriages end in divorce, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are about to be able to relate. The episode starts with Daria finding a box, and it begins to bring back some troublesome memories. So in response, Daria presses her parents for answers and of course gets the usual "I'm too busy, I can't talk about this, and I have no idea what you're talking about, but please just throw that thing away." The episode begins to pick up as we get pieces of information here and there about what unpleasantness this box actually brought up. It turns out when Daria was awkward, she was just as socially awkward as she was now. Go figure. It was so bad that her parents had to go to weekly parent-teacher conferences where the teachers would complain about how she's not interacting with kids her age and doesn't like them, and they're worried that her social development might be just a bit off. By extension, this caused further strife within their family unit. Keep in mind that it's not as though the relationship was hunky-dory till Daria came along, it's just Daria's problems, which require a lot more attention from the parental unit, only serve to stress what underlying issues even further. This culminates in a scene where Daria is in her room and she's hearing loud, aggressive yelling from the other room. The yelling is actually pretty uncomfortable to listen to, especially from our voyeuristic perspective as a viewer. In response to not being able to sleep due to her parents quite literally screaming at each other in the other room, Daria climbs into this large box and reads in an attempt to block out distress. Meanwhile, her dad takes literal bags and leaves. I don't know about you guys, but as a autistic kid who had school teachers calling my parents all the time about the shit I do, and also had parents who were divorcing and screaming at each other just like this, I'm not gonna lie, this hit a chord with me and got really uncomfortable really fast. Daria has always been a cynical individual who is perfectly content with calling out problems when she sees it, but never having the motivation to do anything about it. So when she presses her mom on the issue and gets no answers, she assumes that it's just them lying in an attempt to pretend nothing is wrong even though something is clearly wrong. However, once Daria's sister reminds her parents what exactly Daria was referring to, they have a quick family powwow where it is learned that yes, they had a fight, things had been boiling over for a while. The fight did not happen after that parent-teacher meeting because of Daria, but because it was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. This makes Daria realize that she may not be the easiest person to live with her eccentric nature. Despite her good intentions, her lack of convictions leads to confusion like this. Daria then admits that she's kind of a pain in the ass sometimes and apologizes for being a difficult person to live with, and that she's happy that she's had parents as great as them. So yeah, that was also the final episode of Daria, which was about neglect, abuse, and failing relationships. Pretty dark. That said, to wrap this up, this kind of hits home for me because I distinctly remember when my parents got divorced. Unbeknownst to them, they yelled at each other in the room across the hall, which kept a young, creepy TCR awake at night. I remember bags being piled up, and I distinctly remember the separation process being absolutely terrifying as a kid. So all I can say is, please, if you have kids, Be careful what you say around them, because everything you do and say has a very profound impact that lasts waves beyond childhood.
Bart gets an F. Simpsons. Earlier episodes of The Simpsons had a much larger focus on emotional episodes than purely comedic ones like today. Episodes like Bart Sells His Soul and Lisa's Substitute showed off its emotional range, allowing for some deep and intimate moments. Kicking off the second season, the episode Bart Gets an F set the foundation for these types of episodes. In this episode, Bart's consistent test failures begin to catch up with him, and the school psychiatrist recommends to Homer and Marge that he repeat the 4th grade. With a newfound determination, Bart vows to pass the next test so he can continue on to the 5th grade with his friends. To everyone's surprise, he actually does it, even skipping a snow day in order to continue studying. It becomes incredibly clear that Bart has trouble paying attention, even when alone in his studies. It's quite possible that he suffers from ADHD or another form of learning disorder, which would be the root of his problems. He even prays to God for help in a very desperate and sincere way. When it comes time to take the test, Bart is the last one to finish and asks Miss Crabapple to grade it immediately. She treats it as a normal test, casually remarking on all the answers he got wrong and giving him a 59 out of 100, 1 point away from passing. Bart has an emotional breakdown and begins sobbing, much to her surprise. No matter how hard he tried, even with all the effort he put in, he still failed. She tries to console him, but he continues berating himself over the obvious answers he missed. When he mentions various historical facts, Miss Crabapple is impressed and realizes that he truly has been studying. She decides to ultimately give him another point, allowing him to pass. While it's a happy ending, since it wouldn't really fit the status quo to end on such a depressing note, it's still a rather real and hard to swallow lesson. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, you will fail. It's a part of life that's simply unavoidable. It doesn't reflect who you are inside, it's just something that everybody goes through. But even if you fail at one thing, you're still good at others. Bart failed at the questions on the test, but still learned a lot from his studies. It also just goes to show that standardized tests in America are not a one-size-fits-all model and need to be updated. Perhaps they have since this episode aired. I don't know. I'm a grown-ass man.
Helga on the Couch, from Hey Arnold. The show always had somewhat of a chill and laid-back vibe. Hey Arnold just knew how to maintain this cool city atmosphere that lends itself to some emotionally hard-hitting episodes, like that time when Mr. Huen gave up his infant daughter during the Vietnam War, and don't even get us started on the Pigeon Man. One of the more complicated characters in the series is Helga Pataki. She is a character portrayed as not only a bully, but also a comedic foil, as she happens to be head over heels in love with Arnold. We learn that it takes a special breed of abuse to make someone this obsessed with a single person. The episode begins with Helga pushing some kids down, getting in trouble, and then being forced to attend therapy. This is not because she's being punished for being, well, terrible, but because Miss Bliss, the school therapist, thinks that something's up at home. When Helga goes home, her obviously drunk mom and aggressive father drill it into her that she is not to blab about anything. Throughout this episode, the father verbally abuses Helga, and the mother is shown to just not care. She fails to pack a school lunch correctly, which forces Helga to trade shaving cream for an actual school lunch. Helga eventually talks at length about her insecurities that come from having a sister that is adored by her family, a father that constantly puts her down, and a mother that's not even lucid enough to hold a coherent conversation. In preschool, her parents made her walk alone. A dog attacked her once, and the only person who seemed to even care about her was Arnold. But of course, when others took notice of her interest in him, they bullied her, so in order to maintain control, she became a bully herself. You know, if anyone was raised like Helga, they'd probably go down the same path. And that's why this episode is so powerful, because it's realistic.
Aggretsuko, the dream ends. Alright, time to lay a truth bomb on you guys. I only recently became an adult. That's right, despite the fact that I've been being paid to do this for over 5 years now, I only recently turned 21. And because of this, I have a full-time job on top of YouTube, bills, and responsibilities beyond schoolwork and chores. I'm not gonna lie, I find myself getting a lot more depressed and annoyed more often than usual. But I do all these stressful things because, I mean, that's life. Life can be shitty, work can be terrible and backwards, while relationships can be a nightmare to navigate. Aggretsuko takes a mirror to this reality and reminds us that, yeah, everyone has to deal with the same thing. I really don't know what else to say, but I'm happy to know that I'm not alone out there. And that no matter how shitty things get, there's at least one person in this world who can relate to me. With all that said, you may know why this show has struck a special chord with me individually. It's essentially a comedy directed at 20-somethings who work at an office job, like yours truly. That said, why don't we talk about the actual episode? Throughout the first season, we get this idea that the main character, Aggretsuko, can escape this fact of life through traditional marriage. So she starts yoga to lose weight, in an attempt to, and I quote here, get cute, get hitched, and quit this awful job. As the show goes on, she becomes more infatuated with this idea and more obsessed as she interacts with her cast of friends. At least until Aggretsuko meets the character known as Risasuke, who will henceforth now be known as the Space Cadet. Both characters feel like they need one another. None of them are presented in any real bad light. Just like in real life, both have faults that make this relationship incompatible, and it's painful to see as both cling to one another even though they are miserable together. I'm sure that at least one of you is either unfortunate enough to be in this situation or knows someone who has one of those bad, toxic relationships. These toxic relationships stems from something known as infatuation, and it's what this episode covers in great detail, and is why it gets a little too real. See, this infatuation with needing someone to be happy leads to several characters having disturbing emotional breakdowns, kinda like this one.
When I count to 10, I'll be a happy girlfriend. When I count to 10, I'll be a happy girlfriend. When I count to 10, I'll be a happy girlfriend. When I count to 10, I'll be a happy girlfriend. When I count to 10, I'll be a happy girlfriend.
Seriously, I wish I could give her a hug after seeing that, mainly because I may or may not have been in the very same type of situation in a public restroom before. Recently. The second one involves a character known as Haida, a minor character who started off with some minor interest in Aggretsuko near the beginning of the season but finds his advances refuted. This isn't necessarily due to any fault of his own, but because he lacked the spine to outright state his intentions. This comes down to a scene where he realizes that it's actually way too late for him. This heart-wrenching moment is actually depicted beautifully, as Haida and Feniko, this other hilarious-looking dog thing, have this heart-to-heart conversation where, again, it's explicitly stated that Aggretsuko's taken. His initial facade of being cool with it breaks down as he admits that he has some hostility towards the dude. He wants to punch him out. Fast forward to a little bit later, and we get this.
Damn it all!
Could I be more pathetic?
The drink he saw was the Space Cadet's favorite drink, and something that Aggretsuko gives him quite frequently throughout the last couple of episodes. Again, I've been in this guy's shoes. We all have been in this guy's shoes. It sucks to feel rejected, even if the person rejecting you didn't necessarily even realize they did it. It's just kind of a fact of human nature, and it sucks. And sometimes, like the show depicts, it's a bit harder to get over than one may think. The episode ends with Aggretsuko dumping the Space Cadet after seeing that he's not really a bad person, but it's just not right for her. Given the choice to be yourself or be a girl or boyfriend, she chose the emotionally healthy one. both go home alone and sad. Aggretsuko visits Haida in the hospital, which leads to this clip.
It's just, I know you way better than that guy ever could. 5 years now, right? So how did I lose to him? That's what I wanted to say. But the truth is, I don't know you. The Aggretsuko I know is the idealized one in my head. You know where I'm going with this?
I do. But if you don't say it for real, I can't give you an answer.
Now, in the Christmas special, it actually continues right from this thing, and I actually do recommend watching the Christmas special on Netflix after this, but I do have one last message I'd like to leave you guys with. We as people are generally scared, nervous, and absolutely terrified to express ourselves in a vulnerable state. Because of this, it's easy to say, hey, I deserve to be happy, and I don't deserve to be stuck in this miserable position. We rarely, however, express ourselves in a manner that gets our true feelings across in a emotionally healthy manner, because there's this whole emotional blindness that goes on. So here's what I have to say to you guys. If you're sad, alone, and in this state, the best you can do is pick yourself back up and put yourself out there again. The more you get hurt, the more it becomes easier, and the more you're likely to find that special someone. It's usually not going to be the first one or the second one, but hey, I mean, shit, there has to be at least someone out there who gives a shit about you. So yeah, my older brother, if you're listening to this, that's my advice to you. I love you, dude, and I want you to know I miss you terribly.